Hi friends, what if I told you that the very first sign of prediabetes isn't high blood sugar nor weight gain, and it's also not an abnormal lab called the hemoglobin A1C. It's actually something you can smell. I had a friend, let's call him Alex. He's about his mid-30s, he's lean, he's active, and he said he mostly eats well, but he noticed something odd. I swear my body's odor has changed. I shower, I use deodorant, but it's stronger, sour, it's different. Well, his doctors just shrugged it off because his routine labs were all normal. But it wasn't nothing. That odor was his first metabolic whisper, a change that started deep in his muscles, his liver, and his pancreas. And it was leaking out through his skin. Before blood sugar rises, your body is already talking to you. You just have to know how to listen, or in this case, sniff. So in this video, you're going to learn why sweat chemistry changes before blood sugar rises, how insulin resistance affects your sweat and your skin microbiome, and what specific odors may be signaling about your metabolism. In addition, how your diet, stress, and inflammation will amplify this. And most importantly, how to reverse these changes early, long before prediabetes or diabetes is diagnosed. So why do we sweat? It's not just to cool off or to make us stinky. Sweat is a biological fluid produced mainly by two types of glands, your eccrine, which is most of your body, and your apocrine glands, which are in your armpit, your groin, your scalp, and it plays a pivotal role in your thermal regulation or cooling off, as well as your electrolyte balance and detoxifying trace compounds. It also reflects your internal biochemical shifts. The thing is, sweat is also a fuel for the microbes on your skin. What's in your sweat and what the skin bacteria does with it determines your odor and whether or not it will be attractive, like to mosquitoes, or repel people. And by now, I'm sure you've heard of the hormone insulin. It gets released every time you eat glucose, which you will find in various forms, such as in those candies and cookies, as well as pastries and breads. But the thing that people don't understand well is that how much insulin you need in response to the glucose that you're eating is dependent upon how efficient your mitochondria functions. Now, your mitochondria is an organelle inside each of your cells. If your mitochondria is plugged up, then it will require more insulin to process the blood sugar. So this causes people to have higher blood sugars longer, which then causes higher insulin spikes to get the blood sugars down. So when there's too much glucose due to impaired insulin signaling, such as insulin resistance or the lack of appropriate insulin, cells can't use glucose efficiently. Normally, it's through the aerobic pathway, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, oxidative phosphorylation. This involves the mitochondria. As a result, more glucose gets diverted into the anaerobic glycolysis, producing lactate. Lactate is a weak acid, and each molecule produced releases hydrogen ions. This increases the acid load in your blood. But this is just the first part of the problem. If glucose is continuously high and not entering in the cells, such as uncontrolled diabetes, the body thinks you're starving. The liver then breaks down fat into free fatty acids, which are converted into ketone bodies, like acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate. So these ketone bodies, they are much more acidic, and if they build up faster than they can be buffered, this causes a condition called ketoacidosis, a serious, life-threatening complication, especially in uncontrolled diabetes. Even in less extreme insulin resistance, mild ketosis can increase your acid load. And normally, your body will want to buffer this. It does so by increasing bicarbonate and breathing out carbon dioxide, CO2. But in sustained hyperglycemia, where your blood sugars are higher longer, the buffering capacity can be overwhelmed and you can enter into mild metabolic acidosis. As your blood becomes more acidic, your body tries to buffer it by pushing out the hydrogen ions through your sweat glands. You can secrete hydrogen ions directly. This lowers your sweat pH, making it more acidic. Normal sweat is about 4.5 to 6 in pH. More acidic sweat changes. Now, when your sweat changes, this also changes how it feels. It becomes stickier and changes how it smells. It's more sour. People in early metabolic imbalance, they often say, I'm sweating more, and it smells different. And in addition, when insulin stays high, sweat glands secrete more volatile compounds. Your skin bacteria bacteria also shift in species that will feed on the glucose and the fatty acid byproducts. The apocrine glands, such as your armpit, your groin, and your chest, they release more amino acids and fat-rich sweat. This leads to sour, kind of yeasty, or sharp odor. And it's especially noticeable after you eat a carb-heavy meal. And it remains more intense even with good hygiene and deodorant. That odor isn't random. It's metabolism you can smell. Alex's odor was strongest on the days he focused on refined carbohydrates in his meals that are not only filled with flour and sugar, but let's take a sandwich. It's full of saturated fat because of the meat inside and the mayonnaise. The saturated fat propels and sustains the high blood sugar to the next level for longer. Why is that? Because high glycemic foods like white bread, when paired with high saturated fat foods like butter or mayonnaise or lunch meat, drives insulin spikes higher than eating the refined starchy bread or sugar alone. Now, your body is a chemical factory. You put different inputs, you combine it differently, you'll get different outputs. Sugar and fat, they can't be eating together, not just in the same meal, but throughout the day. And why is that? Because when you have fat in your body, you are telling your body you have an energy surplus. So there's no point in processing the sugar. But unfortunately, if you keep eating the sugar, you have an energy surplus of both. And so combining the two, fat and sugar, makes you more insulin resistant, causing higher sugar spikes. Insulin feeds the sweat chemistry, and the sweat chemistry feeds bacteria, which then turns on more odor. We are so focused on carbohydrates because you need insulin to process the carbohydrates. But that's why we're getting sicker. The problem isn't just eating carbohydrates. The problem is we're eating the wrong carbohydrates and listening to the wrong advice on the internet to buffer our sugars. Many people I've heard say, eat some fat and protein with your carbohydrates. I was told that when I had gestational diabetes. So instead of fixing the real reason why people have insulin resistance, people have been propagating this myth that if we just get our blood sugars good, then we're actually helping the problem. But the problem is they are making the problem worse. They're making us all insulin resistant. And in this culture, we're constantly eating, right? From snacks to energy bars to granola, cereal, cookies, crackers, cakes. We have food all around us. And then we're told it's okay to eat some of these foods as long as we pair it with protein or fat. Well, I have news for everybody. That protein and fat just makes you less able to metabolize those bad foods, which we shouldn't eat in the first place. Therefore, you maintain a higher insulin level because we have higher blood sugars for longer. And then the blood sugars are delivered to your sweat glands, which then feeds a bacteria to create more volatile acids like isovaleric acid, ammonia, and acetone. So if you smell a little different after your meals, it may be more than your deodorant and your shirt that you need to change.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
But when your insulin's balanced, your body can switch easily between fat and glucose burning. But when insulin stays high, fat burning actually is suppressed, and glucose then floods your whole body. Excessive metabolites spill into sweat and your breath. And in studies, people with early insulin resistance, they show elevated short-chain fatty acids, ammonia, and acetone in sweat years before glucose rises. Your odor reflects your mitochondria flexibility or your mitochondrial health or the lack of it. Your muscle, your liver, your pancreas are all key players when it comes to insulin sugar balance. So let's think about why you were given muscles literally all over your body. You have more muscles than any other organ. And it's not just important for you to move your body, they are the glucose sponges. Your skeletal muscles handle about 80% of the post-meal glucose. But when GLUT4 transporters are blunted by chronic insulin exposure or inactivity, muscle cells, they can't take in your glucose effectively. Now, the thing is, when you have less muscle, you have less muscle uptake of the glucose. And then you therefore need more insulin to help you take care of the glucose. And when you're over 30, your muscles actually atrophy. You simply have less muscle unless you've been spending time maintaining your muscle mass or even growing it. And you know how to do that? It's not through eating protein, it's through working out. Hence, there are less sponges if you don't work out to soak up the glucose. And this is one huge reason why people are at higher risk of getting diabetes as they age. So the less muscle you have, the more floating fuel or blood sugars that hang out in your bloodstream, which causes more prolonged insulin spikes, which then translates into more odor. And when you are losing muscle silently, which we all will, unless we're exercising, the odor can be your first outward sign something is off. But your body has a backup, and that is your liver. And as your muscles resist glucose, the liver then steps in. Excess glucose is converted to fat, de novo lipogenesis. Unfortunately, that fat builds up in the liver cells. Ceramides and DAGs are actually toxic fat intermediates that accumulate. And then insulin signaling in the liver gets even worse. So this creates a vicious cycle of more sugar production, higher insulin, higher fat, which is trapped in the liver, and that leads to an altered sweat composition, causing systemic inflammation as well as volatile metabolites. But throughout this whole story, the pancreas all along has been working really hard, pumping more insulin to keep up with your glucose demand. And for many, many years, your glucose will be normal. Unfortunately, nothing lasts forever. And so the beta cells in the pancreas that's cranking out all that insulin, that's eventually going to burn out. And during this entire period, insulin resistance is present without an abnormal blood sugar. Odor, cravings, fatigue, and visceral fat may be the only hints unless you're checking your insulin. But there is one mechanism that accelerates burnout of the pancreas, and that is lipotoxicity. This occurs when you add in a diet rich in saturated fat, especially palmitate, found in animal fats, processed meat, butter, dairy fat, and many fried foods. Palmitate converts to ceramides and DAGs inside your muscle and liver cells. Ceramides block insulin signaling at IRS1 and AKT. DAGs activate PKC, further blunting GLUT4. The result is lipotoxicity, the fat signaling that just shuts your metabolism off from glucose. It reduces your metabolic flexibility. This drives increased volatile metabolite production. The stronger your body odor and the faster your muscle loss and the faster your liver gains fat, all of these may be reflected in the odor. Your odor isn't just a surface problem. It's a reflection of deep cellular signaling gone wrong. Fortunately, fasting glucose can stay normal for a decade, but your insulin is still climbing. So unless you're monitoring your blood insulin levels, you will get a false impression that you're okay. You won't know and you won't realize that you're getting more insulin resistant. And unfortunately, there is no standard panel that checks sweat chemistry, ceramides, or GLUT4 function. But your nose may first notice something despite your normal labs. You can also smell it in your clothes. You will have a stronger odor or a change odor, and you may have different cravings, be more fatigued, have some brain fog, and you will have muscle loss, even though you won't notice it. So early in the game, the liver starts to accumulate fat, and high fasting insulin or HOMA-IR can be tested to monitor that. So this drives higher insulin levels, higher volatile metabolites that are produced, and decreases your metabolic flexibility. So when your labs say fine, your sweat may say otherwise. Odor rarely just comes alone and has no meaning. It often travels with post-meal fatigue, sugar cravings, brain fog, night sweats, or increased sweating, weight redistribution, especially to your belly, and subtle mood swings or sleep changes. And sure, all of these are non-specific, but it probably leads to impaired insulin signaling, dysregulation of insulin and glucose. The beauty of catching it early is that you can reverse it before it's permanent or that damage sets in. Number one, lower your insulin demand by replacing added sugar with whole fruit. So ditch the refined carbs and then the pure sugar, as well as ultra-processed snacks, and convert it to whole grain products sweetened with fruit. Number two, lower your fat content in your food. And that means you have to eliminate or reduce animal products, especially eggs and red meat, which both will increase your risk of diabetes. Now, at the same time, build your muscles, which requires daily movement, resistant training, post-meal walks. Spend a few minutes walking after you eat. And the more muscle you have, the more GLUT4 transporters you have, and the lower your insulin. Now, protect your liver. That means you got to reduce the sugar as well as the fat to help protect your liver. So if you're going to eat high fatty foods or meat, eat it with leafy green vegetables and high fiber foods to buffer your liver. Don't forget to feed your mitochondria with powerful foods like vinegar, greens, legumes, berries. They increase AMP-K to support your metabolic flexibility. Now, that's a lot of of doing. But we also need to take a step back, recharge our minds through rest. Rest is not just sleeping longer and better, which is needed by everybody, but it's also the ability to de-stress. This helps to lower your cortisol, lower your insulin, and to improve your sweat composition, to remove your odor and cravings and increase your energy. So when Alex did what I have been saying in this video, within a few weeks, his fasting insulin dropped, his mood and energy improved actually the same week. And that sour odor started improving and going away within the first week. And now he doesn't need deodorant. Different metabolism. His sweat stopped whispering insulin resistance. Now your body odor isn't random. It's not just hygiene. And so many foods are so powerful to activate your metabolism, including spices. So if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.